All right, let's try this again. Um, we'll see. I am now sitting on my back porch using my house internet, not my phone Wi-Fi. See, it didn't. It keeps going out on me when I use the other thing. So, yeah. So let's do a recap. For those of you that did not see the first one live and are now tuning in for the first time, this is a idea I stole from a baseball barbecue, which is going to be the 30 people. They did 26. The 30 people that will define MLB Pro's 2021 season across both leagues. It's not always going to be the best players. It's just going to be the people that I think will define this season. Really back on this thing. Who drove the storylines? Who moved the needle? All that kind of stuff. So I wrote a list of 30 people. We're not going to get to all of it today. Obviously, we'll probably break it into 3 videos, as I've been told by a couple of different people that we have short attention spans in our league. And obviously, you can see I'm sitting now outside the shed. The shed's behind me. My house is behind me here. See if Atlanta is back over here and it's beautiful skyline and everything. So you can see my new sod that we got put in down here. So, yeah. All right, anyway, let's get back to the list. I'm going to do the same ones I did earlier, I think, hopefully get to a couple more. Let me move a little quicker this time to run through this thing. So the first player that we are going to talk about with 30 people that will define the MLB Pro season in 2021 is going to be my man, Bryce Harper. Obviously, we've spent a ton of time talking about Bryce Harper this offseason, the huge trade from Toronto to Arizona, from contender to contender, possibly pushing the Diamondbacks from maybe the number 2 seed in the National League all the way up to number 1 if they can pass the Mets with a deal like this. The reason I think Bryce Harper in this lineup is such a big deal, I mean, it's twofold, really, but I mean, just listen to it. It's Juan Marine, Das Cameron, Jeremy Scott, Vladimir Guerrero, Bryce Harper, Matt Hanson, Joey Galloway, Shohei Ohtani. The weak hitter in that, if depending on how you define weak, is Joey Gallo. Then that he'll strike out 245 times, but he's also going to hit 40 home runs. Every single person on that list is spectacular. Harper's the oldest one, by the way, and I think he's only 28. Yeah, 28 years old. Every single one of them, again, outside of Matt Hanson, maybe Joey Gallo and Shohei Ohtani, so 6 of them, 5 of them, whatever, have won awards. They're all either current, future, or past All-Stars. I mean, this team is stacked across the board on offense. So adding a guy like Bryce Harper to hit behind Vladimir Guerrero Jr., who in his rookie season already hit something like 28 home runs, is terrifying. And it takes a team that had to make a move, which is hard to say considering how good they were, but to keep up with the likes of Colorado, who added Clayton Kershaw and Trevor Bauer in the offseason, as well as just recently picking up Alex Bregman, right, who could probably be a guy that I could have put on this list who we'll see if he's there later or not. I think the Bryce Harper trade makes them catch up, right? I think Bryce Harper defines the National League West race because his bat, his defense, the fact that he hits from the left side of the plate, which is good to balance out Vlad Guerrero, is such a nice piece for that Arizona Diamondbacks team that I think Bryce Harper's success or failure in this lineup makes a huge difference on where the Diamondbacks finish. I still think they're a playoff team regardless, but the question will be, do the Diamondbacks win the division again? Did they win last year? Yes, they did. Yeah, so did they win this division again for the second year in a row? Or do the Rockies finally win the division? And I say that because, surprisingly, despite the success they've had since Eddie Buchholz has taken over the last 2 years, I guess. Eddie's only been in the league 2 years. But in 2019, they finished second with 95 wins. In 2020, they only won 84 games and again finished second. So, I think that makes one. Anyway, so Bryce Harper, my number 1 guy. Let's bounce from the National League to the American League, right? And let's skip ahead. The order is going to be a little different. Let's talk about Lucas Giolito. And the reason I want to talk about Lucas Giolito in this list is because Lucas Giolito is a guy that is a spectacular pitcher, top 5 in the league, you have to figure, based on the stuff he can bring. For a team that does not figure to be top 5 in its own league, and I mean league as an American League, not American League West, although it doesn't figure to be top 3 in the American League West either. Lucas Giolito is going to define this season because I believe that the Oakland Athletics front office will come to the same conclusion the rest of us has come to already, that they are not built to compete this year. Or maybe even next year, although that an argument can be made depending on how the Angels and Mariners handle the offseason coming up. and Lucas Giolito is flipped. Now, who does he go to is an interesting question, right? I would prefer him to come to the National League. I think if you see a strong start out of a couple of the National League Central teams, which I can talk about in a little bit, you may see one of them make a move. If you see a strong start from the National League East, particularly a couple of teams that we'll get to in a little bit, you could see a move. If you see a strong start from the West, I don't know who are the bottom three. If you look at the Dodgers, Giants, and Padres, would be willing to make that move, or who has the capital to go get Giolito? Maybe the Dodgers, but they have to come up with some pieces they don't like. So anyway, the point is that Giolito is a team player I see move. Now, more likely he ends up in the American League. I have my eye on Boston. I have my eye on Chicago White Sox. I have my eye on the Cleveland Baseball Club. I have my eye on the Yankees, really, although I don't think they have the pieces either. But, it's always an interesting piece with Red out there. So Lucas Giolito will define the American League West season by being dealt out of the division, probably, to a team that wants to compete now and make a push and turn their clock forward, right? Let's jump back to the National League. Let's go to one of those teams that I mentioned as potential landing spot for Lucas Giolito. Although I don't really think he ends up here, but it's a team that I think, depending on how quickly they can start, it would be interesting to see what they end up doing. And that would be the Miami Marlins. And the player I want to focus on here is Juan De Franco, right? Juan De Franco is a superstar prospect who isn't quite ready yet, but did hit fairly well in spring. Looks like he's got an opening, with Cesar Lopez being really the only person in front of him to take that shortstop position. And really, Cesar Lopez is a utility guy who'd be better fit to back up Luis Seda and Juan De Franco and a couple other guys around the board. The thing that makes me a little hesitant, although I think Juan De Franco is ready, right? I think he's ready to come up, and I would love to see him come up and pair him with Ronald Acuna and who's the fellow I just mentioned, Luis Seda, and Cam Gallagher, who's 28, but the guy can rake, and put him with Henry Powell and Wallace King, and just this awesome Marlins team. I wonder if the failures of Ronald Acuna over the last 2 years will give Ryan and the rest of the Miami Marlins front office pause on pushing Franco's clock up a little bit, because Acuna has come up twice in 2019 and 2020. And I think his highest bat, he had 205 in 2019, striking out 86 times in 53 starts. And then in 2020, across 82 starts, he struck out 137 times and hit 201. So he has struggled in both of his trips to the major leagues. And I'm wondering if Franco's perceived readiness at this point is delayed by the fact that Ronald Acuna has struggled the 2 times he's had a chance. Now, Ronald Acuna will again be with the Major League Club here in 2021 if he can turn it on, and if the Marlins can hit and pitch the way I think they can in this weaker National League and really challenge for that second spot in the National League East. I think you see Juan De Franco get called up in a couple of months, and why I think he defines the season is because if Franco gets called up, the Marlins clock is accelerated, and they are now pushing for a playoff spot, and they are now pushing for potentially an addition here, right? I've already talked about Giolito, although I don't think they go get a guy like Giolito. It's interesting to think about where the Marlins would look to improve their prospects. They have not finished in a top 3 spot in this division. They finished won the division. I don't think they're going to compete for the National League East this year, but if they can look at its second spot in the National League East, but how weak the National League Central is, you're really looking at a strong possibility of getting a wild card spot and getting into the playoffs, right? So, God damn, that ended up going a longer than I planned on. 8.5 minutes. Damn, I'm slower than I was last time. All right, let's jump back to the American League, and let's talk about a pitcher who has basically sat out for 2 years. He was a part of the Armando Cabanas trade that sent Armando Cabanas from Atlanta to Seattle, and that is Mark Appel. Mark Appel was traded 14 days after tearing his rotator cuff to the Mariners as part of basically a salary dump by the Braves. Good Lord. And he has been on the bench ever since, right? He waited almost the entire time to recover, and they got set back 14 months. So Mark Appel is now coming off of a 1.5, 2 year absence for the Mariners. And it's basically like adding the best free agent you could possibly ask for. And he is going to slot into this rotation that already includes Cy Young Award winner Danny Holtzman, Cy Young candidate, in my opinion, Justin Hooper. He was the Rookie of the Year and an All-Star over the last couple of years, respectively, and then is anchored by Archie Bradley and Casey Kelly, who have been spectacular. Couple that with this offense that the Mariners are boasting, which is preposterous, and I won't get into it. Mark Appel, as the number 2 starter here in Seattle, gives Seattle so much flexibility here. I mean, he is going to be a number one caliber starter. He was spectacular in spring, by the way. He's looked just like himself from 2018 before he got hurt. 2-0 with a .48 ERA. Mark Appel is going to be spectacular. And if Mark Appel can continue this performance, the Mariners are even more untouchable than we all think they are already, right? Because this lineup's going to score 9 runs a game. You're not going to score on Holton, Hooper, or Appel. Their bullpen is fine, although not spectacular. We'll see. Right, so Mark Appel defines this season because I think he is the piece that pushes the Mariners across the threshold to win back-to-back American League West championships and finally push past the Angels in the playoffs, and it takes the Mariners all the way to the World Series to win their first championship this year. Back to the other side of this piece, we'll move and take a look at Jamie Vega in the National League, particularly for the Atlanta Braves. He is finally making his debut. He was the centerpiece of that trade, the only piece from that trade to ever hit the major leagues for the Braves, showing you what a dumpster fuck fire that trade was for Atlanta. Jamie Vega making his debut has to go right for the Braves because otherwise they just threw away 2 generational talents of Mark Appel and Armando Cabanas for basically nothing. Many of those players have been traded again since, and they're not on the team anymore. But Jamie Vega hit the ball pretty well in spring, hit the ball great in AA and AAA last year, and will get a chance to slot into this lineup, currently projected to hit third between Mike Ogden and Millard Thomas. Not a super lineup or trio there, but Sparks, Ogden, Vega, Thomas, Rogers, Stanton, Smith, Gruen. Yeah, I don't love any of this if I'm an Atlanta fan, but if Vega can hit and play defense the way they need him to, particularly to cover the deficiencies in the outfield between Ronald Stanton and Mike Ogden, I think you really start to see something, right? And I think Vega defines this 2021 season because if he hits well, I think it makes you feel a little bit better about some of the rest of these prospects that you might see: Bo Bichette, C.J. Abrams. Again, Millard Thomas hit the ball really well last year. So to feel a little better about the Braves farm system, I think feel a little bit better about them potentially making a move with some of these guys to get up and compete with Philly, Washington, and Miami for that number 2 spot in the National League East. So that is where I think Jimmy Vega fits into this story, right? Let's see here. We hit Bryce Harper. We hit Juan De Franco. We hit Mark Appel. We hit Jimmy Vega. We hit Lucas Giolito. Let's go back to the National or American League. We're going to go back to the American League West, particularly. We're going to talk Fernando Tatis Jr., who will play his first full season in Houston this year, currently slated into the number 5 spot after a sluggish spring for the Astros. I think Fernando Tatis Jr. is a key to this lineup and a key to the story of how the Astros can get into that second wild card spot. Or potentially trying to push themselves above the Angels, because as much as we all like to look at the Angels as a spectacular team, and they are, Seattle's clearly the team to beat in this division. And if the Angels can't keep up and Houston can take that next step, you run the shot of them catching them. I still think the Angels make this. I think both wild cards come out of the National League or American League West this year. But, that's an interesting piece to me. So I think Fernando Tatis Jr. is a big piece of this because I wouldn't call him the weak spot, but he is a good player that is yet to that spot. Aaron White's great at second. Jose Gonzalez is a superstar in left field. Richard Fowler is great in right. Arredondo is going to mash the ball to the DH spot. Kawawa is going to play superstar defense. Jose Abreu, yeah, look, we can talk about him, but he's going to do what he's supposed to do and just mash the ball. Bill LA is going to be great, and Juan Wilder's great behind the dish. Their rotation's fine. If Fernando Tatis Jr. can be above average at shortstop, this team is a shot to make a run here. So that's why I think he defines this 2021 season. Let's move on to our first non-player of the. Am I looking on time? I'm at 13 minutes. Hey, I actually sped up. We're going to look at Scott Radinski. And for those of you who are not familiar with Scott Radinski, I do not blame you. He is the pitching coach for the Milwaukee Brewers. And I think Scott Radinski, again, just to kind of go through his background a little bit, he started his job here in MLB Pro, started as a pitching coach for the Cleveland baseball team in 2012, pitched for them for 2 years, and then for some reason was sent down. I know this has since been changed. We can't do this anymore, but was sent down from the majors to the Columbus Clippers for 3 years, was then called up to manage the Cleveland baseball team in 2016 for some reason when he made the playoffs, and was then let go. He was then the pitching coach for the Pawtucket Red Sox for 2 years before pitching coach for the Boston Red Sox for the last 3, including Drew Lock's rookie season last year, which we'll get to him a little bit later. Scott Radinski has a really big job on his hands this year because the Brewers are in a weak division with a very good top team, but a emerging core. And if you look at their rotation this year, Pedro Cuevas is 22 years old. Duncan Duimalar is 22 years old. Cody McCutt, 25 years old. Ramiro Solano, 26 years old, and Forrest Whitley, 23 years old. Couple that with some younger guys here in the bullpen. The oldest guy on this team is Anthony Mio at 31. Everybody else is in the mid to low 20s, and there's a couple 27-year-olds. He has the responsibility to shape this young pitching staff. Now, early reports of spring, if you look at this, Cuevas at a 2.25 ERA over 20 innings in spring. Cody McCutt at a 3.94 over 16. Duncan Duimalar had a 1.08 over 20 innings. So 3 really good performances. Ramiro Solano was terrible, but Forrest Whitley was very good. I don't think Solano deserves to be in this rotation, if I'm being honest, but that's neither here nor there. If he can form this Brewers team into something that is, reasonable and looks good, this team can be very, very competitive in the National League Central. So that's why I think he's a big part of this, right? He is going to be somebody that they need to perform. How many people is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He is number 7. Let's do one more. If we go back to the American League, and let's talk about Nick Senzel in Baltimore. The Orioles are actually my kind of dark horse team in the American League. Now, they're facing an uphill battle because New York is stacked this year. Toronto is very good. Boston is very good. But young, Tampa is kind of out of it. But I love the young players here in Baltimore. And Nick Senzel finally getting his call up to hit between Dave Tatum and Didio Guzman is a really, really dark horse to be something. And my dog's going nuts. I'm going to end it there. Appreciate everybody's help. I'll get another one out later.